Hey, what's up, universe? Welcome to episode 17 of It's a Choice. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about choosing to honor your own truth. And it's 4:25 a.m. on Tuesday, February 2nd. This is the day that I'm going to release this podcast. And true to form, I sat for like an hour trying to figure out exactly what I was going to talk about before I did the podcast. But be that as it may, choosing to honor our own truth is something that takes courage and bravery, strength, resilience, confidence, boldness, audacity, all of those kinds of things. It can put us into a vulnerable position because when we choose to honor our truth, what we're really doing is choosing to put ourselves first. And in our culture, at least Western culture, Western society, where most of us in the world have now been influenced by, we've been conditioned to view that act of putting ourselves first, or putting our truth out there and putting our own considerations before the consideration of others, as selfish. And so there's a fear that naturally comes up about the judgment of being construed as selfish. However, if we deny our own truth, if we choose to abdicate our truth to societal norms or familial norms or expectations of others, if we choose to sacrifice our truth for the comfort of others, then we are betraying ourselves. And some of us will start to wake up to that fact, to sense and feel that self-betrayal. And at some point, it becomes painful. And through that pain comes the awakening and realization that sacrificing one's truth for the comfort of another is a real huge disservice to oneself. It's a form of lying, and it's a form of disrespect. You're lying to yourself, and you're disrespecting yourself. You're lying to the world, and you're just not honoring the universe's expression through you, is another way that I like to look at it. So there's a book, Awareness, by Anthony DeMello. Hopefully I said his last name right. And there's a passage in there that I've read so far that speaks to this, and I would like to just share it with you all briefly. So this is from the book Awareness by Anthony DeMello, right? This is about honoring your truth in a way. It says, think of someone you love very much, someone you're close to, someone who is precious to you, and say to that person in your mind, I'd rather have happiness than have you. See what happens. I'd rather be happy than have you. If I had a choice, no question about it, I'd choose happiness. How many of you felt selfish when you said this? Many, it seems. See how we've been brainwashed? See how we've been brainwashed into thinking, how could I be so selfish? But look at who is being selfish. Imagine somebody saying to you, how could you be so selfish that you would choose happiness over me? Would you not feel like responding, pardon me, but how could you be so selfish that you would demand that I choose you above my own happiness? So it's a mental exercise in our own truth. And that is just one example, choosing your own happiness. It could be anything, but stating your truth unapologetically brings up a resistance, I believe, in most of us, and a fear, if nothing else, of being condemned or judged, or rejected, or at least antagonized, perhaps, depending on the scenario and depending on what your truth is. I bring this up because of a number of reasons here recently. I have a muse that inspires me for a lot of my podcasts, and I know that for her, she, this woman, my muse, is inspired a lot of what I just said. She is dealing with her own, honoring her truth, and very recently. I have another friend who's a woman who spoke her truth and informed me that the reaction to that was not well received by her family. And so through that, there's fallout. There was a cost to her speaking her truth, which can totally feed into our fears. I myself have ran into that here recently over, Christmas with my own family. A couple of months before, I spoke, my truth, and continued to speak my truth and live my truth through my actions and changing relationships, with my family. And that has definitely had a cost, very similar to my friend who had her own kind of family fallout. I as well experienced something similar. So it's definitely rational and logical to experience the fear that comes along with honoring one's truth. At the same time, or eventually, one becomes aware that that fear doesn't serve them. It's a betrayal. It's a form of self-abuse and disrespect to allow another their comfort, their expectations, their desires, their beliefs, their interpretations, and their stories to dictate to us how we should live and express ourselves. Obviously, that is not our truth. Their beliefs, their stories, their expectations, that's all them. And it has nothing to do with our truth. And this is exactly the whole reason I created the podcast, was to invite others to live their authentic life, to find their truth, and to give them some form of inspiration or permission to express and follow that truth. Another example that comes up as I speak this is with my own children. I've invited my sons at a fairly early age to express their truth, to me, because I've told them that just because I am their father doesn't mean that I'm right. There's going to be things that I say, or things that I think, beliefs that I have, or interpretations that I have, stories that I have, that can be called out and may not ring true for them. And I want them to have the comfort and the confidence and the freedom. I want them to feel secure enough within themselves to be able to express their opposition in a way. And I don't necessarily mean that in an aggressive sense, but like their contrarian view to an authority figure. I want them to be able to honor their truth. If somebody in a role of authority says something, instead of having my children take it on as gospel, I want them to be able to question it and interpret it in a way that feels right for them. And then if it doesn't feel right for them, to have the strength and the courage to feel confident enough to express their truth. And I've invited them to do that wholeheartedly for many years. They're 12 and 14, and I would say I've been doing this for probably at least the last 6 years with them. And to my youngest son's credit and to my delight, he has definitely shown up that way a couple of times, and I've always applauded him and honored him whenever he's chosen to speak his truth and let me know where either I'm crossing a boundary for him or I'm showing up in a way that he doesn't appreciate. And I think that just brightens me, because that is my intention, is to give him the freedom and the permission to challenge me that way, and for me to show up in a way that can receive that challenge and to pivot and to grow through that experience. So honoring our own truth is an opportunity for others to grow with us. We're honoring ourselves, we're respecting ourselves, we're honoring and respecting the universe's expression through us, regardless of the consequences of that action. Because another consequence, and this is one of the things about the word, consequence seems to have a negative connotation, but there are positive consequences to actions, right? There's a consequence to eating. You nourish your body. There's a consequence to drinking water. You hydrate your body. There's a consequence to breathing. You live. So there's positive consequences. It is not strictly a negative word. So one of the consequences of honoring our truth is that it will provide the opportunity for others to either be inspired or to find their own reflection in their response to your truth, if they're aware enough to see it. But regardless, the opportunity remains, and it's up to them to choose to see it or not. So that's really what I have for today, is to take a moment, get still with yourself, perhaps put your hand on your heart, breathe slowly, think upon some truth of yours that you know is real, because you can feel it. And where or with who or whom have you neglected or betrayed that trust because you've been willing to sacrifice that truth and your own honoring of yourself for the comfort of another? And as you sit and you breathe into that and you feel that truth, I just invite you to consider what it would be like if you chose to honor that truth. How would that make you feel? And while, again, we've been conditioned to believe that it is selfish, just as Anthony said, in awareness, who's really being selfish? If the other is coming to you and being like, don't speak your truth because it makes me uncomfortable, or I'll be angry with you, or like whatever other type of negative fear-based reaction that you think they may have, or what fear it may inspire within you. And then just ask, who's really being selfish then? Somebody is asking you to abdicate your own authority, to shut down a piece of you, to ignore a truth that is real for you on the behalf of them. So just breathe in and find your truth. And then choose whether or not you're comfortable yet to express it. But at least become aware of it, acknowledge it, and at least silently honor it. And I invite you to, at some point, liberate that truth and let it come out into the open, because that is the universe. It's expressing itself through you. And there's no right or wrong. There just is. And how everybody else chooses to show up and respond to that is on them. And it's a reflection of them and has nothing to do with you. And your light of honoring your own truth will shine through. And that will be an inspiration for others. So, as always, and at the conclusion of all the podcasts, I invite you to live an inspirational life, so that way you can go and inspire others to live their authentic and inspired life. Because in the end, living an inspired life is a choice. Thanks for listening. I love you guys.